Count money, man. Stack riches. Try and told him I'm a beast, bud.
What's up, gang? Welcome to another episode of the GRINDcast. Get ready. It's a new day, and we got two special young ladies in the house with me today. We have Miss Lamera over here. How you doing, Lamera?
Good. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, this one's going to be cool and new and exciting. And we have the boss lady, Alyssa. Alyssa is I call her like the CEO of the good news. So she runs, we started years ago. The vision was to have a news kind of feel and channel for our agency. You know, I used to look at some of the news out there, and, you know, a lot of it is what's going on in the world negative, but you know, there's so much good going on out there. So I used to tell people like, man, we should have a news station that's all the positive news. Go out there and find what's going on, what's good with people. And so I said, well, I can't control that, but I can control this. So we're going to start the good news here in our agency. And she came highly recommended. One of the top tier students out of Youngstown State came here to work with us, and in less than 2 years has literally revamped and made such a huge impact on our social media, on all of our media outlets, and runs the good news. And so today we said, why don't we switch it up a little bit? Alyssa's going to be the point person of this. I'm going to sit back, relax, and hang with my friend Lamera, and she's going to do the interview and talk today on the GRINDcast.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, and I'm really happy that my first introduction to the GRINDcast is with Lamera, because my career, I love the one thing I love is just talking to people who have extraordinary stories. So when you gave me the opportunity to be here, it's like, wow, what a great opportunity. So, you know, Lamera, I want to start by asking you just, you know, you are our house recipient. So tell me a little bit about that process from your perspective, you know, how you got introduced to us, and, you know, your initial thoughts when you heard you won the house and everything like that.
So honestly, my story about getting out starts way before I even got the house.
Let's maybe go back a little bit too, and even just talk about yourself in general, like, you know, career, whatever you want to touch on. Just kind of give us a little introduction to who you are.
I can't wait for people to hear it. I remember talking to her for the first time over the phone. I was sitting in the parking lot of the mall here, the Ross Park Mall, when I spoke to you for the first time. And I was like just blown away. You know, I knew right then and there that's like, this is the one that I'm supposed to connect with right there. So looking forward to hearing even more of that story.
Well, I'm Lamera. I grew up in McKeesport, a little bit outside of the city of Pittsburgh. I grew up to a single mom. My father was killed when my mom was pregnant with me, so it was just her raising us, me and my brother. I have two older brothers, one from my mom's side, one from my dad's side. I have two beautiful children, a daughter, Anaya, who is 10 years old. I also have a 1-year-old son named Josiah. And I work as a workforce case manager, so I help those who are low income kind of get acclimated into the work field and kind of prepare them for the workforce. So whether that be providing case management services or just kind of doing like professional development coaching, things like that. I just got a promotion, so I'm also doing marketing development now too, so that's exciting. Yeah, that's a little bit about me.
So let's kind of go in from there to the house and kind of how you got introduced to us and how that relationship came to be. And I want to hear Simon's perspective on it too, because really just a little backstory. Since I've been here in 2020, this is something we've been talking about. Like, I've heard this project being played out for 2 years now. So I know it's huge on your heart, and just so take me from your perspective of how this came to be. And I want to hear Simon's too.
So I actually just recently had to tell somebody my testimony about the house, and I was kind of just thinking about, like, where do I even start? Because there's a lot to my story. But I think the house specifically, that part of my testimony starts in 2019. My daughter and I were baptized. Everything was kind of going well. I had the job that I really wanted, working in real estate. Like, everything was kind of going well. I was actually about to start a new job and things like that. And we were in a car accident like days after we were baptized. And that kind of was like a punch in the gut for me, because I had just kind of came out of a space where I was kind of growing and healing from my past experiences, and I was excited to just kind of live, honestly. And so I was just excited, but we got into that car accident, and then that kind of just took the wind out of my sails, for lack of better words. I was like extremely discouraged, and I kind of went into this funk for about a year and some change. I couldn't walk really for 6 months, and then 6 months after that car accident, I was in another car accident. My daughter tore her kidney, and so there was just like a lot of things going on, even spiritually, for me, that I was just kind of done at that point. And I remember just kind of saying to God that I don't necessarily know what I need or what I want, but I just knew I needed something different. Like, because I had just got baptized and I was encouraged, but then that happened. So I was like, okay, God, I just need something to kind of like light that fire in me again, for lack of better words. And so unfortunately, you know, I was in that funk for a little bit longer than I thought I would be. My son was born in 2020. And I remember when I had him, I just was determined to get out of that space. Now having 2 children, I just felt like they needed me to kind of find a way to come back to a healthy place mentally. I was battling with like postpartum depression and like mental health stuff. So I started having people pray for restoration. They were like, well, what does that mean? And I'm like, I don't know. I just need restoration. Like, I just need all things new. I just need a fresh start. And so that was the prayer, starting in August of 2021. I started praying, just God, I need a fresh start. I need a fresh start. Again, not really knowing what that would look like, but having faith that it would look like something. And so months later, my pastor told me about a connection that he made with, I guess, Pastor John. I think it was Simon's pastor. And he was telling me that there was somebody who was just looking to bless somebody for Christmas. At this point, honestly, I had no idea it was a house. Like, no idea at all. I was excited anyway, because I'm like, I was praying for a fresh start. I was praying for new beginnings. I was praying for restoration. So even not knowing what it was, I was excited. There was just this level of like hope that I kind of saw, the light at the end of the tunnel. And so I just was telling people, be praying. They were like, again, what are we praying for? And I'm like, I don't know. But there's somebody that's looking to bless somebody for Christmas, and I just need a blessing. And so fast forward to the first phone call. There was just something in my spirit. I was like, this is like kindred spirits almost, in a sense. Like, it was just, I don't know. I kind of just felt like the presence of God, like even when I was talking to him on the phone. And I don't know, something just in me, I don't know. So they mentioned that it was for a house, and I just about lost my mind when I got off the phone, if I'm honest with you, because that was the first time that I had heard that it was a house. So I got off the phone and I'm like, whoa, Lord, that's not necessarily what I was talking about, but if this is your will, then wow, essentially, right? So fast forward a couple weeks later, I talked to Simon again, and he told us that we were actually the recipients of the house. And for me, I had to go back through all of that time that I just told you guys about, because for me, like I said, it didn't just start at last year, or it didn't just start with the house. Like, the house is like a culmination of prayers over a span of like 5 years. And so it's incredible. It's incredible. Yeah, I'm grateful.
And you mentioned like this kindred spirit feeling, and I know you've said something similar to me too. So I want to hear this from your perspective as well.
Yeah, so it was, for us, when you first came in, it was like a vision first of like, all right, we're going to do something big. We do all types of cool contests here, and where our salespeople win, a bunch of money. We gave away a car, recently, and I'm like, man, what could we do together if we were just to focus on something that ain't got nothing to do with us prospering? It ain't got nothing to do with a sales contest, ain't got nothing to do with us winning anything, but how about we see what we could do blessing somebody else, and what could we do that's big? And for me, it became a house was the first thing, because, that was so significant to my mother and I. Before I knew Lamera was a single mom, I was raised by a single mom. And the first house I grew up in was, we sold it. It was a hand-me-down from my great-grandmother who we lived with. She passed away, and gave us that house. And we eventually sold it going into my freshman year of high school, and we got $11,000 for the house on the east side of Youngstown. And from there, we bought our first house that we actually like owned. You know, my mom was so proud. You know, the years of struggle. You know, to have a kid that's 14 years old, you just now getting your first home, 5 minutes outside of Youngstown, Camel, and bought that house for I think $36,000, and 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, no finished basement, no garage. And we ended up making my room, the attic upstairs ended up being turned into a bedroom. But I remember as small as it was, to me, it was like such a big deal, you know, as a kid. Like, man, we actually got our own spot, a little bit safer than we were before. And I had my own space, my own bedroom. And I remember that whole feeling. So I'm like, man, I think that's the thing that came to my mind. And so then we went to all these different outlets and ways to try to drive traffic and applicants of like, who we going to pick now? You know, who do you give this to? And I got, you know, people looking at me, friends of mine, you know, looking at me like, you know, I need a house. You know, I need some help. You know, and it's like, man, this ain't for you. You know what I mean? I could just, without even talking, I could just pick up the vibe of like, how about me? You know, it's like, no, I didn't want to know this person at all. I didn't want to have nothing to do with it. And because, you know, like you say it goes, man, it's just goes way back 5 years. It goes way beyond the house. It goes started way before that. Well, I feel the same way, you know, that this wasn't a me thing. This was what God has done, you know, in my life and in our organization, in our agency. I didn't want it to be somebody that I knew. I wanted it to be somebody that we didn't know. And it wasn't me. It was our whole agency had this vision. Everybody kind of supported this and wanted to do something like this. And so then I reached out to Pastor John, because I got overwhelmed, you know, with all the people that wanted this, you know what I mean? And so I started to ask for his advice, and I told him the area and the location, because a friend of mine, Josh Adamick, went out and found the place. That's what he does. You know, he finds homes at good value, looks at them and says, man, if we put some money into them, it'll be worth, you know, way more. And he really does that for people that are looking to invest. So I'm like, man, could you do this for me? And here's what I'm trying to do. And I know he would do it because he got such a good heart. He's always willing to, you know, help. And so he found this place, this home. And so we were kind of tied to that location, that area. So then I had to find somebody in that area. So it helped to shrink down the amount of people, applicants that we had.
Right.
And we still had a good amount of applicants, you know, and there's probably people out there right now not blessing me, you know what I mean, right now, like, man, it should have been me. But Pastor John, as I started to look through and read through some of the stories, I'm like, all right, these are the couple people that I'm going to talk to now, because I kind of got a vibe for who they were on paper, you know, hearing from others. And so I'm like, I'm going to start talking to people now. And when I spoke to Lamera, it was like, man, I knew right then and there, I felt that same thing. You know, I felt like this is the right thing to do. And it didn't have to be a single mom, you know, but that kind of put it over the edge, you know, for me. And then she's such a well-spoken, you know, as you see, classy, you know, young lady. A lot of times you hear people, you know, that are getting help, you know, in some area, and you think of somebody that kind of is like demeaning, you know, it's like they don't have much, or they're not doing much. Like this wasn't the case. Like this girl was moving, growing, spoke really well, spoke better than me, you know, over the phone. And I'm like, man, this is what I wanted, is to give somebody a hand up, not a hand out. And this is, I could tell she just needed a little launch pad, and that she's just destined for so much greatness. And that's why I was thankful for Lamera's spirit. You know, I told her in the beginning, you know, I if she would have told me, man, I just don't want to talk about it after this. I don't want to be on the GRINDcast, you know, I don't want to talk to the agency, you know, I don't want to be on the video, you know. And I told you the whole time, I'm like, just make sure she knows, like, she ain't got to do none of this stuff.
Right.
Because it was never really about, man, truly, it was just never about the, like, man, what could we get out of it? You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of other ways I could have tried to get things out. It wasn't really get out of it. It was more to inspire other people and inspire our organization on what an impact we can make on other people's lives if we really come together and do something together. Because the mission is, you know, what can we do now? We want to become a bigger organization so we can make a bigger difference. You know, what if we could do 10 homes, you know, for people one day? What if we could buy a block, you know, one day and help out a bunch of people and literally change a community? I don't think we're that far off, you know, from doing something like that. And so I think a lot of that is exposure. You know, before I learned how important it was to give, somebody taught me by showing me. John Maxwell says leadership is caught, not taught. And it's by what you do, not always by what you say. So I thought our people could learn and grow. It would make them a little bit more passionate to want to be a giver by actually seeing the person. A lot of times you give to things and it's like by faith, and I love that. But when you can actually see a person and say, man, this is actually where this is going, it'll inspire more people. And that's what we wanted. That's what we wanted to do. And I can't stress to people enough that, you know, and to you, how grateful that I am for you
I'm grateful
to share your story and take it, you know, the right way, because I want to make sure, you know, that it's like, I ain't looking at you as somebody that, like, you didn't, I mean, you appreciate it, but you didn't need it. You know what I mean? She needed it, but she didn't need it. Like she's moving. She got her stuff together. She got some support. She got a head on her shoulders. She got talent. You know, I can already see where she's going. And so that's the perfect type of person that we wanted, that wasn't just going to sit on it and this is it, you know, for them. And this is a launch place that Lamera is going to have. She's going to do big things. And I just love being around people like you. So I am just grateful, you know, for that spirit.
And, you know, I would say, just hearing you both talk about this whole experience, it seems one thing that really stands out is your faith and how you were able to kind of be resilient through these hard times, car accident, postpartum depression, et cetera, because of your faith. So, you know, I'm just curious, like, what initially brought you to your faith, and why is that so important to you?
I grew up in church. I think, you know, I always was exposed to it. My mom is actually a reverend, so I was in church my whole life. I remember sleeping on the pews growing up. But I think my own personal relationship with God started after, honestly, a really bad breakup in like 2015. I kind of got to the point where I was like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired. There has to be more to life than this. Like, I literally remember that day like it was yesterday. I was like on my knees in my living room, and that was like my first actual experience like with God on my own, because, you know, we can live through like our grandmother's faith or like our parents' faith, but after a while it's like you have to kind of develop your own relationship, your own story or testimony with God. And so for me, that's kind of where it started. I think after that, it forced me to be honest and be vulnerable with God. That was never something that I was taught. I was kind of taught that some big man in the sky, you just are obedient, like, but he wasn't reachable or attainable. And so for me, he became real in that season of my life, because I was honest. It didn't feel good, and he accepted and embraced those moments, like where I was like, okay, I don't want to pray right now. Like, I'm frustrated. I don't understand why life is hard right now, God. Like, I grew up knowing you, growing up in church. Why am I going through this? Like, and that was my process. And I think I had to go through that, because now coming, like, the resilience comes from the fact that I'm honest with God, that I'm honest about what I go through. I think one of the echo chambers you might hear if you like interview people that know me is that I'm extremely vulnerable, and it starts first with God and then with people. Vulnerable with God, vulnerable with myself, and then being vulnerable with other people. And so that was something that I had to develop. I'm still learning that. But I practice. So like in that anxiety, I was telling Alyssa that I really struggle with anxiety, but in those moments, recognizing that I can say, okay, Lord, I'm a little fearful right now. And I don't have to feel like there's this expectation that, okay, you need to pull it together. You have to get yourself together. And so that's kind of how my faith journey started.
Yeah. Like allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling
Yeah.
and work through it. And, you know, I know that there's a lot that you've overcome in different ways, and do you want to maybe just give some advice to people out there who are going through a season of adversity and, you know, somehow need, you know, maybe a way to see through it from your perspective? What would you tell those people?
First, I would say to feel. Like, I would say start there. Allow yourself to feel what you feel. Allow yourself to I like to say you have to fail in order to heal, because for me, that was my story. Like, I had to allow myself to like lean into the pain, as difficult as that was. And my advice would be to do that in the safety of like people that you trust or community that is safe. That's not something that I would recommend doing. Like, if you're battling with like a lot of mental anguish, I would say do it with somebody, but allow yourself to fail. Allow yourself to be vulnerable, first with yourself and then with God and then with other people. I think also recognizing that everything that we go through, it all truly does work together for the good. Like, I try not to be too churchy, but Romans 8:28 talks about all things working together for the good of those that love God. And so for me, what that looks like, me being like a visual learner, what that looks like is, I think about my grandmother. She used to make like these blankets, and she would have like all of these different pieces of blanket. Like, there would be like the pink part, then the purple part, then the white part. And then I remember her just kind of stitching all of those different parts together. And at the beginning, it didn't look like a blanket, or it didn't look like whatever it is that she wanted to accomplish. But like, as she just kept stitching all of those different pieces together, it then was something that she was able to give like as a blanket for her grandkids, something that now we enjoy, something that now we value. But it took all those different pieces in order for her to get that one big blanket. And so that's kind of how I equate Romans 8:28. Everything that we go through in our life is a stitch. It's just a small part of a bigger story. It's just a very, very small part of your purpose. And so for me, I would say that's my advice, to know that there's not one thing that's going to be wasted. There's not one thing that you go through that isn't going to be used to either help somebody else or grow your faith or make you better. And so I think that just kind of grow through the process. Grow through the process. Let yourself fail. Be vulnerable. Be honest. Find a counselor if you need to. There's so many different things right now. This is just like a shameless plug, but there is so much free mental health services right now. And so that's my encouragement too. Like, find people that you can count
That's great.
on.
Do you know of a place that?
BetterHelp is one that's offering free counseling services. For those who like meditation, there's an app called Balance that's offering a 1-year meditation app. There are when I say so many,
And these are online.
These are all
so you
virtual.
don't even have to like go and find someone.
Absolutely, because you know, that's why a lot of people, especially right now, we're in a pandemic, but on top of that, people are not as comfortable talking to somebody maybe face to face. So I love the fact that now there are a lot more options for people to get help when they're going through things.
When you're online too, you're able to find more people around the nation, because if you're only looking at the people, and we're in the Pittsburgh area, you might be limited to only those people. So it's just it expands it even more. And what are like some things that have kind of made you go into this mindset? Like, what are some things in your life that have just kind of shaped who you are?
I would say losing my father. Like, I think my father being murdered before I was born impacted me in ways that I'm still unpacking. I think, my mom being a single mom and having to work as much, there was a lot of things that I had to teach myself, that I had to like learn on my own. Like, I was a runaway. I was in and out of placement growing up. There was so many things that I experienced, but I think coming out on the other side of that gives me more of the empathy for other people. And I know that's not necessarily what you asked, but I just wanted to say that too, because I've gone through a lot, but it gives me a greater level of understanding of why people might react the way that they're reacting or feel the way that they feel. It gives you just a deeper level of compassion too, to recognize like you just never know like what somebody is going through. And when people talk to me and I start sharing my story, they even say to me like, I would have never known that. And I'm like, you never know though, right? Like even the person in the grocery store, the person you might walk past, like you never know what people go through. But those are some of the things that I've gone through. Having a child, my daughter, I was 17 when I had my daughter. And so even that kind of forced me to have to grow up in ways that I maybe wasn't going to grow up in. And so, yeah.
That's another connection, that I found from her when we had spoke, and was that her father was murdered when she was when her mom was pregnant with her. That's Amaya's story. That's my goddaughter's story, who lives with me. I consider her my daughter. She's 19, years old right now. Moved with me when she was in 8th grade, and I was in her life the whole time. Her dad was one of my best friends and was murdered my freshman year of college.
Wow.
And so I haven't really found anybody like her until her. I never, and then to hear from somebody of like, man, I know there's one person right there that you guys would just hit it off. And her name's Amaya. She has Anaya. Her daughter's Anaya. Now you got Amaya.
Right.
You got Amaya and Anaya. But I think you would really enjoy Amaya, and she would really enjoy you, and really to hear from somebody that has kind of started to unpack that, because that always is something I thought about, of like, man, how much could it really bug you if you weren't even necessarily here yet when your father was gone? And there has to be a bunch of emotions that come with that only somebody that can relate to.
Honestly, what you just said is why it took me so long to unpack it, because I was under the impression, like, how could you miss something you never had? Or how could you mourn the loss of something that you never was able to really, have a relationship with? But I think our identities come from our fathers. And so when we lack that, you tend to try to look for anything to try to, fill the void or find some type of identity. And that was my story for a long time, until I recognized what the root of it was. And so when I say, like, now I'm still unpacking it, it's because there were behaviors and things that were taking place, and thought process and things that I had that were all wrapped up in the fact that I lost my father and didn't have that relationship. So yeah.
Yeah, and I know that there is a lot of younger people who listen to this podcast, high school, things like that. And your story, just the theme throughout is just kind of self-reflection and, doing the inner work. And I would say to anyone out there, especially younger people, like, it doesn't matter where you start, or it doesn't matter what you go through. It matters, how you grow through it. And, something I want to touch on too for Simon is, there's a lot of people from the outside looking in who look at a situation like this and what we're doing with this house and think, how can I get involved with something like that? Or how can I do something like that within my own community, or, whatever, even if it's on a small scale. So what, advice or guidance would you have for those people?
I think people get paralysis of what they can't do. Typically they have this vision of, man, I can't do something as big as I would want to, so let me get right first, and then I'm going to be a giver. Let me get my stuff in order, and then I'm going to be a giver. And I would just tell, people, what I've learned is that you give where you are, what you have. If you're not going to give $1 out of $10, what makes the Lord think you're going to give $1 million out of 10 million? And it's not always money, it's time. It's you can give energy, you can give positive love, you can give words, you can give your time at a local charity nonprofit. And being that I've been a part of starting 2 separate youth programs for inner city youth, it's a lot of help that's needed. And yeah, money's needed, but man, it's a lot of times it's just a consistent, reliable person that even if it's once a month, we know that one person is going to be there once a month. Or if it's once a week, we know that one person is going to be there once a week. And just having a consistent, reliable person that's willing to show up a couple hours a week or a couple hours a month really, really does more for some of these places that help and serve so many people more than people think. And so people would analyze that and say, man, I can't give 100 hours of this. I can't give 30 hours. I got my own this. I got my own that, going on. Let me wait till I get right, before I can give some time to anything else. Or let me, man, I would just encourage you to give what it is that you do got, what you do have, whether it's $5, 5 minutes, 5 hours, 30 minutes, to something, because not only will it help impact other people, but you'll end up just blessing yourself on accident, from it. The things that I've received from helping, these kids and being a part of other people, because it's not just me, it's a group of people that make that happen. The blessings that I've gotten from it, the joy that it's brought to my life, it's helped me mature and grow in ways that I never would have expected. They've done way more for me than I have ever done, for them. So that's what I would say. Get involved locally, especially locally where you're at, something that's close and something that's inspirational or something that you're connected to may not be what I'm connected to. Find something that inspires you and go out there and help somebody.
Yeah, and I know this relationship isn't one that ends after today or after you get the house. I know this.
I
is
told her
something
she was
that-
stuck with me. She thought I was playing.
That's what he told me too. He's like, we're gonna be friends forever after this, and it's so apparent that this relationship was formed, not by accident at all. So thank you both for having me. It was
Thank you so
a
much.
pleasure to be on the GRINDcast, Simon.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, Lamera. I appreciate you, and you're stuck with me. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the GRINDcast. Get ready, it's a new day.